The focus of this video is going to be on creating a very simplistic version of a cam using SolidWorks. However, what I really want to focus on this video is actually going to be looking at our fit to spline command, which we will use along this path. There are better ways, or at least simpler ways, to create cams depending on what you're after within SolidWorks. This works very well and is fairly simple as it is. But it's a great way to illustrate a way to create a spline without using the regular spline command. So with this, what we're trying to do is to create a cam follower. So one of those little objects with some weird shape that you have a little piece hanging down from and touching the edge of it. And as your cam rotates, this piece is going to go up and down depending upon the surface that you are working with there. So what I have here is not actually a step that you have to follow within SolidWorks, but I figured since I was in SolidWorks anyways, I would create the grid here. So this is my time versus position graph for my cam. This is what I want the overall cam to end up looking like. So I have each of these different pieces is one step in time for my overall revolution. So I have 12 of them. So each of them is 1/12 of the overall rotation, or really this could be considered degrees. So we are going a total of 360 degrees. I've got 12 spacers, so each of these is going to be 30 degrees. So with that, basically what's going on is for my first 60 degrees, I'm staying flat, and then I want to linearly move up to the point where I am, instead of, well, in this case, this is, I think each of these might be a ½ inch, but I'm not entirely sure. Not really the point, but I'm moving from, let's say, 1 inch out to another 2 inches, so this is 3 inches out. And then I am staying at that position for a whole 60 degrees. In 30 degrees, I'm coming down, staying flat, etc., etc. So that is what we are trying to make. We're trying to create a cam that is going to follow that trend. So our first step for doing this is we are going to go ahead and create a circle that is going to follow this path. So this is going to be the center of my cam. I'm going to go ahead and put it in this location so that I don't actually have to do any of these measurements. But as you can see here, I have this overall circle. So everything is going to be part of this, and this point right here is going to be my center of rotation. So with that, I'm going to create another set of lines, more or less in this case, where I have 12 lines here going across, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. I am going to pattern this such that I have 12 lines moving around this circle. Each of one of those 12 lines, between each of these is that segment of 30 degrees that represents the 30 degrees happening between these 2 points. So once I have that completed, I'm more or less going to add what's happening between each of these sets of lines. I'm going to make that set into what's happening here. So what's going on right now is I just switched everything to construction to make my life easier, and I'm going to add a circle so that I can see that at my first time, I am right at this point. It is this distance, so if I didn't have this guy here, I would create a circle of radius. I think this is 1 inch. Because again, I think each of those is about ½ inch. And then what I'm doing after that is I'm going through and adding each of my points. So I believe I've already added a point right here because my second point is right there. And this is moving over one section, moving over another section. I'm still right at that radius, so I'm going to go right there. Moving over to my next segment, I am right in the middle here. So I have to actually add a circle. So that's what's going to happen next. I'm going to add a circle for where that is going to line up. I think I'm going to do that in a second. Oh, I think I'm discussing it currently. There we go. We create that circle. We're going to make a construction because we're focused on these points. And I add another point for this next segment for where that it happens. And then my next segment, I'm up here, which is this maximum height. I add a point here. And I'm going to go around and just add these points. So I'm going to go ahead, quickly undo all of my pink text here. And we're going to just start adding points to this, similar to what I physically have in SolidWorks, but it's a little bit harder to see within SolidWorks. So I've got a bunch of points here. And then I drop down here, move over a couple, it looks like. So I'm there, and then I'm dropping down, and I'm back at this original position. So those are all the points that are happening at each of these locations. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and start replacing these with curves because I need to know what's happening over that time. And in order to make it easier to see, I'm just switching to a new sketch. And I can add 3-point curves because I have 3 points. In this case, we don't really want to just add a bunch of overlapping 3-pointed curves, so I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to create an overall curve, so I'm adding a curve for this entire line. And at this point, you can actually see it because we've got a solid line. I've got a 3-point curve for here to here. I've got a 3-point curve from here to here. And I've got a 3-point curve from here to here. However, I am still missing one 3-point curve, well, 2 3-point curves, because between here and here, and between here and here, I don't know what's going on. Which means that I'm not quite done, and this guy just didn't end up coincident. So with that, in order to fix this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to break this 30-degree segment into 2 parts. It should just be set to 15. I set it exactly at half, making a driven dimension so it doesn't end up doing anything, and just using equations for this. Definitely not required. We could have just written 15 degrees in there, but do whatever sometimes. Continuing on, I now have that piece, and I can add the same piece over here, doing exactly the same thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this halfway point, and I'm going to add this halfway point so that I can add these last couple of curves exactly how I want them to be shaped. I'm going to undo a bunch of the writing just so we can physically see what is going on here. But I'm adding those circles like I was talking about for those locations. Again, if you didn't have this grid made in SolidWorks, you could definitely just create the piece by adding dimensions to these circles. I had the grid, so I used it. But I just am still using 3-point arcs, and I'm going to go ahead and add my points, so I've got a piece to click on. And I've got a 3-point arc going across there. And with this, I have my basic cam shape. Now, one thing that I probably should have showed is I probably do want to use this offset entities piece, just because if I want it to be a certain height, I'm normally, when I'm looking at the end of the cam, I'm measuring to this point here, and the cam normally has some curve to it, and I would subtract whatever radius this is by offsetting it. Doesn't need to happen, however, so we're not going to worry about that in this demonstration case because we're just showing a cam that moves how we want it to move. And with this, I now have this sketch. Now, I could extrude this, except each of these points would create it so that this is a single face, this is a single face, this is a single face, and what's going to happen is your follower is going to get stuck a lot of the times in those areas. So when we're designing cams, we want some form of rotation there. And I have gotten past point. All of a sudden, instead of waiting for computer me to check up, computer me is ahead of talking to me. But in order to fix this, I'm going to use fit to spline. So this is right under the tools function, as you're seeing right up here. Let me go ahead and get rid of that dot. So with that, sorry, computer acting up a bit. With that, I go to Tools. I go to my Spline tools, and there is a spline command that is called Fit Spline, and that is the real focus of this. It doesn't have to just be used for cams, nor does it have to be used for a complete shape. We can just use it for a set line. But what we can do with this is we can use it to take our overall selection here and create it into a single line, a single continuous line. And what we're seeing here is we have the ability with our tolerance here to change how close we are fitting to all these lines. And what that's going to do is we've got all of these very sharp junctions. It's kind of like adding a fillet to it. It's like, oh, we need to be that close, or oh, we need to be a sharper corner. How close to that original shape do you have to stay? And I'll go through a couple of pieces to show that here. So changing it, you're seeing that these lines are all of a sudden deviating significantly versus I set it very small and it's deviating, but not by much. So we can change this how we want to. I think I just jumped through a couple of these just to show some more ridiculous references. But what's happening is these areas where I'm adding these approximations to, they're not going to perfectly fit my overall shape. But hopefully we don't need it to be at that precise, because if we did, we probably wouldn't be using cam motion because we need some transition. Our piece isn't going to jump instantly from place to place. Last piece that I wanted to talk about is this guy down here. Basically what's happening with this is all of these yellow lines, you saw me click out of it. This is just showing a visual representation of how sharp the curves are at any given point. It's just a curvature display. Lets you see things a little bit more clearly as far as how quickly we are changing directions for our lines, because that is a interpretation of, well, in our case, I guess Fit Spline isn't always used for cams, as I said before, but in our case of cams, we care about how quickly we are changing direction, in that our cam follower actually has to change direction at that pace. But with this, I can go ahead and hit my check for my Fit Spline, and that is going to create an overall piece. Note that I had keep the original drawings, keep the original lines selected. If we go back just a little bit, we had the opportunity to delete the geometry. We could have gotten rid of the original lines if we wanted to. In this case, they're still showing even after I hit this check mark. And I hit this check mark, and there we go. And now we have an overall piece. And as you can see, when I click on the line, it selects the entire line at this point. So it is one entire continuous line. And what we'll see, I'm going to go ahead and add the rotational device, the little hole in the cam that we're rotating around. But once that's done, I go to my extrude here, and I set up my extrude. You're seeing that this entire piece is one surface. I clicked on it. The entire thing is turning blue. The entire thing is one connected surface. And that's going to be very important when we get to our mates and our use of the cam for simulation. So this needs to happen. This needs to be true. They all have to be a complete single surface for the mates we're going to want to use to keep this together for SolidWorks in general. So outside of just general creating it use, it has a use if we end up going into animations or other things like that with that. So hopefully that was helpful. Take care.